You're all scared now. You know he's recording, so be able to watch what he says. Terrible.
The real question is this going to be trimmed down before the final edit?
Well, none of the others have. No, there's been it's all been director's cuts, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
With all bloopers left in, because that's the way you make sure everybody watches to the end.
Quite, yes.
You keep the laughter in, don't take it out. Right, we're now at 16 screens. Is there anybody egregiously missing? Ah, here's somebody. Admit. Who's that then? It's just a number. 109, 105, 144.
Roy.
Paul and Roy.
Is that Paul and Roy? Excellent.
Hello there. Sorry we're late.
Oh, good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, just had a little sherry.
Well, I mean, that makes a change for everybody else who's been drinking scotch in industrial quantities for the last hour. So, yeah, absolutely excellent. Good. A little sherry. What a nice way to start the evening. It's very civilized.
Very civilized.
I daren't drink when I'm working. I just daren't do it. It's such
You get yourself talked about.
Oh, yes, I no doubt that I would, yes, and by a lot of people very quickly. Yes, I might manage a small sherry myself on Christmas afternoon or something.
Hello. Hello, Peter and Rosemary.
Hi, Paul and Roy.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I have an awful feeling I'm possibly interrupting something. Do we know? Is any specific kind person leading the meeting tonight?
Yes, two of us are.
And that would be
myself and Jill are leading this evening.
Right.
Okay. So pin your ears back.
We'll listen.
Well, you can talk as well, but it might be a good idea if we start by muting and then we unmute ourselves as we want to contribute. So there'll be a bit of input to start with. I'll just shut the door to keep the dogs out. Come on, out we go, guys. Come on. That's it. I think the dogs are probably atheists. It's living in a vicarage that does it. I'm going to share my screen to start with because I want to show you a slide or two. And the first one, do say if it hasn't shared. It should have shared by now. There we are. Now, Robin has very kindly been putting on the Benefice website the O antiphons, which are the antiphons for evening prayer on each of the successive days, beginning on the 17th of December. And this was yesterday's. And I thought, what a shame it's not today's, because it would be perfect. It would be perfect for our theme, which is light. And what I love about this is it plays very strongly into this most important of metaphors in Christian culture and language. O rising sun, you are the splendor of eternal light and the sun of justice. O come and enlighten those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death. That's great. But I just want you to look at the Latin version for a moment, just at the second word, oriens. That is translated as rising sun. But anybody who knows anything about origins of words knows that oriens must refer to something Eastern, like Leighton Orient. The Orient is the East. And the rising sun rises in the East. And it is to the East that we look in Advent waiting for the coming of Christ. The Old Testament prophecies are full of this business of turning to the east to look to the future. And it's a very, very powerful and a very strong metaphor. The eastern light, the Oriens, the rising sun. Some basics. Without light, we cannot see. Without light, we very quickly lose our sense of direction. We live in a very light polluted world, certainly in the urban parts of it. It's very difficult, unless you happen to have somebody build you an astronomy tower on top of Sedgley Beacon, it's very difficult to see stars in their true brilliance and their true radiance because of all the sodium light and halogen light that's around the place. Many years ago, when I was a teacher, we took a group of third years, so that's year 9 in modern parlance. We took a group of year 9s to a place in South Wales, in Blaenavon. It's called the Big Pit. It's a mining, it's an authentic coal mine, deep cast, and we all had to get into the cage and be sort of wound down and taken into one of the coal shafts that was still around. And once we got there, they switched all the lights off. And it was the only time in my entire life that I have experienced total darkness. I could make my hand touch my nose, but I still couldn't see it. The darkness was total. And a number of things happened. First of all, I didn't know which direction I was facing in. Secondly, I got completely disoriented. Thirdly, I didn't know where the exit was. And fourthly, the 30 seconds for which the light was extinguished felt like about 5 months, because it was such a shock to the system. Now, in an agrarian economy, like Jesus was born into, the metaphor of light in darkness was even more powerful than it is for us, because they didn't have that kind of light pollution. They would be used to intense, deep darkness. And total darkness is therefore used to describe a number of states of mind. And the light which shines into it is the thing which enables us to function, enables us to see, enables us to make sense of our surroundings, helps us to view the world in all sorts of very particular ways. And in a spiritual sense, the purpose of the light, which the prophets certainly refer to, and we'll be coming to Isaiah, Jill and I, between us later on, the purpose of light is to help us to become better Christians, to help us to grow closer to Christ. That sounds great, until you realize that when light shines, it doesn't discriminate where it shines, and therefore it shines in the places we want to see, but it also shines in some of the places that we don't want to see. The light can make it embarrassing, awkward, a little bit nightmarish, as the light is cast on past deeds and events and moments in our lives that we'd rather not think about. Sometimes the shining of a light into our dark places can bring up stories and traumas which have their roots in difficult and far off places. And I think this is one of the reasons why light is such an important metaphor in the realm of the healing ministry of the church. If we did but understand the true nature of what Christ comes to offer, then healing is a major part of that. Healing of individuals, healing of communities, healing of neighborhoods. It's immensely complicated, but at the same time, the ministry of the church has an important role to play in that particular area, because Christ comes and shines a light on the dark places in us that need to be healed if we are to be fully formed and fully mature in Christ. And we can spend an awful lot of time in self-denial about that. I'm going to stop there and ask you to unmute, and just to give me some reactions, if you wouldn't mind, so far. Have the things I've been saying, have they resonated? Do they sort of chime with you in terms of the strength of the metaphor, but also that business of light shining into difficult places and suddenly becoming aware of having to be honest with ourselves and seeking the assistance which perhaps we need?
If I may start, it's interesting how you've used that metaphor of light. So often I've heard of the metaphor of silence. And why do we like to fill our spaces with noise? It's because when we're faced with silence, we have to come to contention as to what we really are. We have to think about ourselves, and it's always a thought which we don't want to mind, but it's interesting how you use light as a metaphor, and it makes so much sense, because you do shine a light into that situation which you so often try and block out.
Anyone else?
The first thing I thought about when you were saying that, Father Damian, was just sort of like an analogy of when springtime comes and the light changes and gets brighter, and as well as that positive feeling, it starts to show up all the dusty, cobwebby corners of your house and the fingerprints and dog licks on the window that need attention. And it's interesting to sort of apply that. It's true what you say about your own soul, as it were, and every so often you do need to dust away the cobwebs and clean off the fingerprints, don't you? And come to terms with maybe stuff that doesn't get looked at very often.
I think for me, and we spoke about this last Sunday, Father Damian, sometimes in my job, that there are areas of my life that come to the spotlight, that are hard areas to talk about. Last week I spoke to somebody who'd adopted a little girl, and I said that I was adopted, and then we had a huge conversation about that. Sometimes sharing the hard parts of yourself allows you to sit with people closer.
Yeah.
Putting it out there in the brightness, and that it helps people to see that they're not alone with what they're going through, and that other people have been through similar, and there's always people there that you can talk to. So sometimes it's not good to hide things in the darkness, and bringing them out in the light can help others.
I think one of the frustrations of all pastoral ministry is that we long for people to open up and allow this sort of stuff a certain airing, not because we're sort of inquisitive or nosy or gossips or any of that stuff, but simply because sometimes the stuff that people carry, the baggage, if you will, is so evident and people are so weighed down by it. The pastoral ministry of the church is such that you can put some of those bags down for a while when the light is shone on those areas. But whether we suspect that we're the only ones who are carrying this stuff, or whether we just think we're not good at self-disclosure and it doesn't work well with us. We're taught to be stoic, aren't we? We're taught to put up with stuff, as opposed to sitting down with someone and saying, well, it's like this, and this is what I carry, and these are the things that, and I suspect that that's probably the root of some people's antipathy towards the sacrament of confession. You know, I can fully understand that and sympathize with it, but I do know what a difference it can make. And so there is a certain frustration when you think, well, maybe if there was more of that, that sense of companionship with this baggage, you know, it's like, you know, a priest becomes a railway porter. Remember those? Will help you to carry your bags for a bit. And when the light shines on difficult places, and maybe this happens particularly when we're bereaved, when we lose someone close to us, that can open up an awful lot of stuff that we need to process. And light shines on those things, and sometimes we'd rather it didn't. But nevertheless, it's good to know that there are people to whom you can go just to say, look, this is absolute hell. How do I deal with this? And those are really rich moments, because to make a difference to an individual soul is a profound privilege. And that's part of the nature, not just of priestly ministry, but of all pastoral ministry. And when the light shines, the darkness can't comprehend it. We're going to come on to John 1 in a minute. And the light will never be defeated by the darkness. That's a central tenet of our faith. And it's just something perhaps for us to ponder as we move forward. Any other comments before we move on?
There is a comment. I can't help but think of what we saw this morning. It's quite wonderful that you mentioned light. We've had very dark mornings, sun rising not before 8:20 if it's risen at all. This morning we had to go on a shortish journey. I'm not saying where. It had something to do with a turkey. And the darkness, and in the distance we saw beautiful orange cloud with a wonderful silver lining, and you can't separate that. I'm not sort of saying how can I put this, creation is part of God's world.
Absolutely.
And it's so wonderful, and that was light. And I just think it's fairly amazing that you mentioned Oriems, and we rather love it. Thank you.
Splendid. Well, no, thank you for that. And I hope your Turkey trip was successful.
It was.
let's move on to John 1, because I mean, apart from the fact that it's absolutely my favorite passage of scripture, and you were going to get it at some point whether it was relevant or not, the fact that it happens to be relevant is tremendous. So let's I can find the appropriate. Here we've got a passage you'll be very familiar with, but I've highlighted the number of times the author of the fourth gospel uses the word light in the first 9 verses. You know, it's about the Word, by which we mean Christ, the manifestation of God's glory, the Logos in Greek. But he suddenly goes off in verse 4, and it all becomes about light for 5 verses, because John knew how elemental light was as a metaphor. And if you delve into the writings of John, and particularly the letters of John, John works in 2 colors. Well, not colors, but 2 shades, black and white. There is no gray area in John. Something is either completely light or completely dark. And you are either a child of the light or you are a child of the dark. And to him, the Word, the best way he can think of to describe Christ is the light that is coming into the world. And that comes back to Isaiah 2:9, which we'll refer to in a minute, that the people that walked in darkness has seen the great light, which Anthony so magnificently read in the carol service from behind the steering wheel of his car. But it's just very striking how light becomes almost everything in this incredibly important passage of Scripture. And it's just worth remembering that this is probably one of the most important scriptural metaphors for who Jesus is. And to enter into the mystery of the identity of Jesus is in fact to say, well, Jesus is the light of the world. What does that mean? How does that change us? How does that affect us? And it's a very, very strong sense indeed. I'm going to finish my bit with a splendid YouTube clip, which Gill pointed me to and is absolutely stunning. So
my name's Dr. Javed Abdulmanang.
We'll just get rid of the advert.
I'm the UK president of Médecins Sans Frontières.
And there.
Father, can you share the screen?
It is shared.
I can't see it. I thought it was me.
We can't see it.
I'm sorry, I thought it was shared. Let me share it. There I was thinking I got it sorted. Wrong. Right, let's do that again. Share screen. There.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yes, that's better.
Started.
Child prays for peace. My name is Scott Harrison.
Just listen.
This is my wife, my son, and my one on the way.
Oh, stop it. There we go. It doesn't help to take yourself too seriously, does it? Over to Jill.
Just put the other one first.
How many crying eyes were there then watching that?
It was beautiful.
Wasn't it?
It's actually one of my favourite, and I certainly know that it's one of Dawn's favourites, if not Dawn's favourite. But when I found Lauren Daigle singing that with that video, I just thought it was perfect for what we're talking about tonight, and that is light. So Father wants to share the caption that we did, LIGHT. I saw it before.
It was there. I know. I've just got to find it. Just a minute. There we go.
There it is. Yeah. And I just played around with the word light and tried to look at various words that I could fit to it. So the first one being L, the first thing that came to my mind was the love of Christ. And what I want you to have a think about at the moment is there any other words that perhaps we could put alongside the L? L, love. Is there anything else that's L that stands out to you for the love of the light?
Longing.
Longing, good one.
Luminosity.
Oh, we're on a roll here. Very good. I, invisible. God, being invisible. Anything else?
You could go kind of down the road of the hymn, immortal, invisible.
Yeah.
All the things that God is not, i.e. visible and mortal,
Yeah.
would begin with I.
Incomprehensible.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Love that.
Invitational.
Immutable.
Igniting.
Oh, we're doing really well there.
Roll here.
Next then, G. Obviously God.
Goodness.
Goodness.
Yes.
Right.
Great.
Absolutely.
Grace.
Grace. Lovely. Love that. Yeah.
Giving.
Most definitely.
Generous. Glorious.
Excellent. Heaven.
Holy.
Holy. Yeah.
Holy.
Hope.
Oh, I like that one. Yeah.
Heart.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, truth.
Testament.
Ah.
Trust.
Trust. Yeah.
Time.
Sorry?
Time.
Time. We have some lovely words there, and that just comes from the word light. Isn't that phenomenal that we can find so many words, and all those words help us to describe Christ himself? So, following what we've just been talking about, I've got a few questions here. And the first one is, would anyone like to share with us? Do you want to share the screen again, Father? How the message of Jesus has been good to yourself in your life in recent times? It might lead on to the second question, because it's very difficult to separate the two. And my second question is, where in the darkness and unexpected places do you often find God? One leads into the other. You can't have light without darkness. So where in your lives has Jesus been good to you? For me, I'll start off and say that a good few years ago now, I went through a very difficult time in my life, and it was all around the same time that my mum died. Mum died of Alzheimer's, and she was in a very, very dark place. I was in a very dark place, losing my job at work, and that was an extremely difficult time for me. And just relating what Father Damian just said earlier about the darkness. I was in a very dark place then, and ended up having to go to see somebody like Father Tony, a counsellor, to help me get over what had gone on with my mum and what was going on at work. And I really didn't know what the future held, where I was going to go. I wasn't ready to take retirement, and it was a big decision for me in the end to actually finish work. But there was no way I could go back to the job that I'd got. And I ended up going to see a counsellor. And out of the counselling sessions, then it brought to a head that my dad had died when I was only 24. I never actually did grieve following my father's death. So the whole lot came out. And that put me into an even darker big pit than Father Damian was talking about earlier. And I didn't know where the heck life was leading me until suddenly, hey presto, what did I find? Parish nursing. And that for me was a big light. And I truly believe that I was led there with the help of God behind me. So there's my testimony for tonight. Anybody else?
I didn't know about your dad. I too lost my dad at 24, and the long and short of it is that had he not died when he did, I would not have been ordained, because I'd have spent time messing around, wasting time. His dying at about the time when Fiona and I married, certainly within a few months, made me think, well, this isn't a rehearsal, and if that's what you're going to do, then you've got to get on with it. And sometimes the darkness pushes you, or something pushes you out into the light, and you get fruitful things coming from terrible situations, which just defies all our rational attempts at explanation, really. But there is a mysterious force that drives. I remember Karen saying a couple of weeks ago, talking about how fundamental faith was in all of these conversations, and that was learning to trust in the darkness, that there was going to be a good outcome, or an outcome that God wanted, was an immensely sustaining thing for me, and continues to be so, and has been during the course of this year. You know, in no uncertain terms, and that comes in different ways. I said last week that the incredible sense of support and encouragement that I get from parishioners is massive, and that's part of the light in darkness sometimes. And very often, just an encouraging word will put a whole different perspective on a day. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing for all of us to be able to do. And it's relatively easy to encourage one another. And we all need it.
Definitely. Definitely. And we went on to talk about Isaiah, and people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land and the shadows of death, a light has dawned. That links in quite nicely to the next video that I've got for you. If
Right.
Father will share that.
You hope I'm going to share. Yeah. Okay. Just a minute. Can you all see that?
No.
Should be able to.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
I can see it.
Right.
And me.
As we're talking about light tonight,
Peter, hello.
the Lord Jesus Christ,
Very well.
I just want to share a few reflections with.
Might be a good idea. I mean, could we possibly mute while the video's on?
Until 8 o'clock. Absolutely not. And at 8 o'clock, if it's still going to be convenient for you, I will call you back and we'll have a chin wag. Is that going to be all right? But Peter, I don't want to cause you any problems, and don't want you to feel that your call isn't appreciated.
Okay. Right, we all set. Let's go.
As we're talking about light tonight, the light of the Lord Jesus Christ, I just want to share a few reflections with you about the lights on our Christmas trees. A few questions that you may be able to think about and reflect upon as you sit by your Christmas tree over the next few days. What if the lights on our Christmas tree represented the people who don't know about the light of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love and the hope that he brings? Second, what if the lights on our Christmas tree represented prayers that we pray for someone who's actually coming to see that light? What if those lights on the trees represented the people that we've shared the good news of the Gospels with? We're challenged in Isaiah when we hear about the people who walked in semi-darkness, having seen a great light. So, as we look at our Christmas trees this year, may we be reminded of the light of the Lord Jesus Christ that he's given to us, and he's coming again this Christmas. And the challenge for us as his people is to share that good news with others.
That's just something for you to think about when you turn the lights on your Christmas tree this year. And I ask you, Are you ready for Christmas? Are you ready to receive the light this Christmas? To be comforted that God came to a world that was unprepared for him to come. And if you think about it, everybody was unprepared for him to come as he did. And this Christmas, we may be unprepared. Many of us are wondering what we're going to do and where we're going to go and who we're going to see. Don't think I'm going to be seeing anybody. But I still trust that God will be here with me. And you never know, he might surprise me and he might surprise all of you too this Christmas. So a Christmas that's going to be very, very different for all of us, really, could end up surprising us. Any thoughts?
I think your reflection was wonderful. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add my voice to it in saying thank you very much, Jill. Extremely challenging, but comforting as well. So thank you for it.
Thank you.
I'm a big sucker for, maybe I should just leave it at that. I'm a big sucker for people decorating the outsides of their houses with lights in December. When I was in a rural farming parish up in Lancashire, there were two houses farmhouses on either side of the road, and you knew it would start about midway through November. The first rope of lights would appear on the farm on the right hand side as you drove through, and it would progressively, this competition would build up on either side of the road until basically they were diverting aircraft. Because of the amount of light that was being generated. But I loved it, and I find myself, I mean, I like to think that I've got reasonable taste in most things, but I just go with Christmas lights on houses. I just think the gaudier the better. Nothing succeeds like excess, and if you've got Father Christmases climbing up ropes and you've got reindeer on roofs and all that sort of, I'm all for that, because I just think it's wonderful to see lights just defiantly shining in darkness. And that's a sort of everyday manifestation of it. And the estate here is quite good. There's one or two houses that really do go for it in a serious way. And I just think it's fantastic. It just seems so brash and positive and defiant and fun and lovely. And, you know, we're not going to let the dark and the cold have the last word. And whether people see that in a spiritual sense or not, I don't know, I don't care. I just think it's great. And we love just driving around and looking at some of the stuff that people come up with. It's marvelous. We really wanted to, you know, to do that on this vicarage because you'd see it for miles. You know,
Father, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Where are you from again?
Me? Good. That's a very good question. But to my family, the illuminations were vulgar. But yeah, there you go. There you go. That was how Blackpool extended the season.
Yes.
And you know, that's an incredible thing to see. And the way to see it, by the way, is from the air.
Mm.
It's astonishing. But we're not alone in Blackpool, aren't alone in that. But that idea of lightening the darkness that comes to us naturally, there's a defiance about it. And I love that, because it says, oh, it may be dark, but we refuse to settle for that. We refuse to be cowed by it. We're going to get on and we're going to live to the full as far as we possibly can. And if that means putting out lots of outrageous lights, let's do it. It's great. Maybe it is my Blackpool upbringing. I don't know.
But after Christmas, when all the lights go out and all the trees taken down and all the Christmas cards put away, it's very, very sad.
Yeah.
It seems to bring with the winter back again. It goes cold and the lights go out.
Well, maybe we should start a campaign for True Christmas, because if we did that, we could have the lights up until February the 2nd.
Ah.
And that's sort of January out at a stroke.
Absolutely.
You know, the feast, dare I say it, the feast of Christmas. Yes, you've got the Christmas octave that takes you into the new year, but you've also then got the broader Christmas season, which goes on till Candlemas. So you keep those lights out. Don't mess about. And just because everybody else is packing the tree away at the end of the 25th, that's their business. We can live as defiant Christian people, refusing to be cowed by the darkness right the way through the bleakest month of the year, which is January. So, you know, who's up for it?
The Queen doesn't take her Christmas tree down, does she?
Well, no, but she has somebody to do it for her.
That's to do with when her father died, though, isn't it?
Ah, yes. Yes,
Was
indeed.
it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
6th of February.
Yeah. There you go.
Can I just say, sometimes you need the darkness to be able to see something that you wouldn't expect. Because when we were on holiday once in Tenerife, at night we were taken up part of the mountain to a part where, a bit like Father said earlier on, it was completely dark. But the idea was then we had a guide and we all looked up and we could all see the heavens.
Brilliant.
And of course they pointed to Polaris, which was the North Star, and then every other planet round it. But you wouldn't have known it was there, or you wouldn't have been able to see it anywhere else.
It also, in order to do that, they use the laser pen. And it also makes you see how a sharp light can shine through all the darkness. And you can see through the darkness with it, with a light.
Of course, we were meant to have this conjunction, weren't we, last night? But of course, it was cloudy with a chance of meatball. So nobody got a chance to see anything, which was a great shame because it won't happen again in any of our lifetime.
I think it's 800 years before it'll happen again.
Oh, well, that probably just about wraps it up, does then.
There are some lovely photos though that have been put on Facebook of people that did manage to see it.
There are, yeah.
That's good.
I haven't seen any today. I tried looking to see if I could see some photos, but no.
I'll send you some.
I've seen some photos, and also, don't you think how significant it is that this year of all years we get that conjunction?
Yeah.
You know, we talk about signs from God, and yet, you know, what a wonderful thing to happen of this year of all years.
Yeah,
He may surprise you.
It'd be really interesting to talk again in January and to find out in what ways God did surprise us. I mean, on one level, you could argue that this gathering has been quite a surprise. I don't think any of us started this year thinking that we would do anything like this, and yet it's been appreciated by so many, including myself. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope we will carry it on in some way. But do look out for the surprises. I mean, when Jill said, when we were talking this through the other day, and Jill said that, you know, this could be the Christmas when you learn about stuff or have stuff revealed to you in an entirely new way that you never thought of before, and yet it opens a door on a whole new way of thinking about God and Christ and what all this stuff is fundamentally about. And it's just, you know, the ground has been plowed, folks. What we need to do now is listen and be aware, as we've never been aware before, of God's activity in our lives. And wow, what a great payoff that would be at the end of 2020. If God was going to reveal more of himself to us through all this stuff we've been going through.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't make sense of what's happened or why it's happened or what the outcome will be, but I do know that God is active in it. And it may not always feel like it, but that's the nature of spiritual progress. We make progress by keeping going in the challenges, in the hard stuff. And all of us, I'm looking at the screen now, all of us have got stuff we have to deal with or have had to deal with this year. And so don't be surprised if God surprises you.
I don't think, just leading on from that, I don't think it's, and I quite agree with what you've said, but I don't think it is just about surprises and about us being surprised by things. I think it's about us, I think we need to look for the light. And I think the way that things are shaping up, we're clearly in for a very, very dark period. And it could well be darker than the period that we've already come through. And I think for a great number of us, we've had to look through the light to get as far as we've got. And we're going to continue to need to look for the light in all of this as we move forward, and if we are to get through that, and we need to help other people to find that light and that support. And it struck me today, so I've managed to finish work now, and I've spent the day wallpapering the bedroom. It was very exciting. And I'd got the radio on in the background. And I was getting, I'm obviously fully established as middle-aged now because I was getting, I don't know what you're looking at, Dawn, you're older than me. And I hasten to add, not because I'm a nasty person and I'm I do know, Dawn. And but the thing that was grating on me as the day went on was there were loads of people ringing into the radio and saying what an awful Christmas they were going to be able to have because they weren't going to be able to do all of their Christmas traditions, and they weren't going to be able to get everything that they wanted to, and they weren't going to be able to have 75 people around for lunch, and they weren't going to be able to go and see the people they wanted to see. But one thing that I haven't heard mentioned in any of the commentary about all of this is the 70,000 people who are going to have a gap around their table this year because they've lost people in this virus. And I haven't heard that mentioned once in this debate.
Yeah.
It's almost as though we're not really through the thick of this yet, and these people have become numbers, and all people are concerned about is, I always see my great granny and my auntie Ada on every Christmas, and I see my best mates in the pub at lunchtime and that sort of thing. And those people are going to be really, really, really struggling to see any light at all during this. Yeah. And we need to, you know, we've got a lot to get through. We're not through it by a long chalk, and it's going to be dark, and there are going to be people who need help to see the light, to see any light at all. There's going to be a lot of people who can't see any light, and they're going to be hopeless. Yes. Sorry, pontificating there.
No, that's hugely significant and reminds us that actually we've got some really serious thinking to do as to how we can be a resource for those people. You know, St. Martin's, we're dealing very much more with people's material needs at the moment. But I just wonder how we can, as three different communities, how we can be more reactive to this sort of thing. Because let me tell you, it's the most insidious thing in the world, trying to find people who have become isolated.
Yeah.
It's a very, very hard thing to do because as a self-selecting group, they are the hardest to reach.
Yeah.
And that's why our networks have to be really good. We have to be able to communicate with one another about particular instances and, you know, one person at a time, people who come on our radar screen and say, well, I wonder if we might think about reaching out to X, Y, or Z. Those are the things that ultimately make the difference, and I'm quite sure that we'll spend a bit of January thinking about that.
That's how it done.
Well, there is the Ettingshire Park grapevine, which works reasonably well on occasion, and on some occasions works extremely well.
Yes,
so we shall have to keep our ears to the ground, everybody.
Well, we've kind of all tapped into that. Well, a number of us have tapped into that on Facebook, and it's been hugely significant this year in all sorts of ways. But we need to use every means at our disposal for staying in touch with people.
Well, the Ettingshire Park residence is a good one, but I mean the actual grapevine itself, the word of mouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
That has worked in this area for quite a long time.
And it usually manifests by phone, isn't it?
Yeah, and also word of mouth. If you meet somebody in the post office, say, you know, it's always worked.
So it's the meeting people that's going to be difficult in January. Because I mean, we had somebody on the news earlier on saying they would be very surprised if we didn't all go into Tier 4 in January.
Yeah, we'll all hunker down.
I'm afraid so. It could be hibernation time.
Yeah.
We can't go into people's houses, but I mean, presumably most people on here are like me. I spent a heck of a lot of time on the phone.
Yeah.
All since this thing started.
Yeah.
Supporting people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've had a few Christmas cards, you know, from people who have said things like, "You make me smile," and I'm thinking, "What? I make people smile?" But
you make me smile, Pat.
And me.
You make me smile, Pat.
But
Pat, you've done a wonderful job.
No,
you really have.
I'm not looking at that, Verity. I don't want you to say that.
No.
But
I've lost you. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we can still hear you.
It's an astonishing. No, we're still. We can still hear you.
Right, and I consider myself to be a keeper in toucher and a cheerer upper.
Yes.
And do you know what that's called, Pat?
What?
Christian ministry.
Okay. Fine. You've said things like that to me before.
I knew your voice would flatten when I said that, but it's true. You never believe me. It's
what can I do so that I can see you again?
Darling, no.
Back on.
Pardon?
You click on your camera, side, bottom left.
She's on her iPad.
No, I've gone right back to my iPad. What's it now? Never mind, doesn't matter, as long as I can hear you.
If you hover, Pat, don't you get some options for your microphone and your video?
Oh, hang on, wait a bit, I've got you back.
Hey!
Marvellous.
Done it, hey!
So there you are. That's the indispensable role that you play in the wider community.
Yeah.
And that's the point. That it's
hugely.
When you're talking about helping people to find some light in the situation, we need to be visible as a beacon of light, almost, don't we? Both in we need to be visible to the communities in which we live, that there are things going on, so they can visibly see something's going on, including if they're not on things like Facebook. It's about us having some physical signs that there is still some life going on in these places.
Yeah.
But it's that point about, you know, about what Pat's doing and hopefully what everybody's trying to do, and to support people and communities through all of this in any way that we can, isn't it? And that is a sign of light, isn't it?
Yeah. So saying, I am conscious of time, and that we've slightly overrun our allotted hour. But before we go, can I say, first of all, a massive thank you to everybody who contributed to the online carol service.
It was brilliant.
It was very good.
It was brilliant.
Wonderful.
It was absolutely delightful, and I was thrilled to bits with it and with people's reaction to it. So thank you to all the readers and, you know, everyone who contributed. It was fantastic.
And can we still get into it?
Yes, you can still get it on YouTube.
Okay, and what should we go into?
Go to YouTube and go to Wolverhampton Society Parishes.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll do it.
That's got everything that we record and put up there. This will go on there as well.
Thank you very
much. All the Zoom stuff will go on there. So yeah, that's been a great success. But can I also thank you for your participation in this little course? It's been a real joy. Thank you to those who have led our sessions. And it's incredible. Each one has been different, but they've all been thoroughly kind of engaging, and you know, the range of stuff we've got through has been absolutely fantastic. My next question is, I suppose, do we start this up again in January, given that January is going to be such a bleak month in one way or another? And is that something that might characterize our hibernation, if indeed hibernation is what happens?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Is a general consensus that Tuesdays at 7 is where it's at, as far as, well, in that case, I mean, to go back to something quickly that Anthony said, we need to enable more people to engage with this stuff. I know Anthony's been working very hard behind the scenes to try and enable 1 or 2 more people to engage with this. So we'll work on that in January. But if I'll send an email out with some thoughts about how that might work. But for the moment, thank you for making this such a very special Advent. It has been a joy. It really has been a joy to be part of this. And I'll see some of you, most of you, over the course of the next few days. But please be assured of my prayers, Father Ross's prayers. That's all he can do at the moment because he can't lift anything. And Father Tony's prayers also, and Father Roger's, and to wish you all the surprises that God has in store for us this Christmas, and that whatever you do and whoever you do it with, that you have a time of consolation and peace, and that all our Advent words will dissolve into the mystery on Thursday night, and how wonderful that will be. But thank you one and all. It's been great. It's been absolutely great, and I look forward to renewing all of this next year, and to lifting the spirits in all sorts of ways, because it's still Christmas, January, still Christmas, so you're still allowed a gin during the session, so that's all right.
Even better.
Happy Christmas, everybody.
I know you're hiding
Happy Christmas.
A very happy Christmas to you all, and
you.
Stay safe. Lots of love.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.